Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming at lunchtime. I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road to College. Nice to see everybody here today. Well, it's my lunchtime. Of course, if you're in a different time zone, it could be different, but thanks for coming in the middle of the day. Let's see, just want to make sure that everybody is able to join. Great. Love to just start off and maybe if you can put in the chat quickly where you're viewing from, what year your student is in high school. I'm going to guess everybody here has a junior, but there might be people here with younger students as well. And also kind of curious if you've already started the process of researching colleges. And if you have, great. If you haven't, don't feel like you're behind the 8 ball yet. You still have enough time, but it's good that you're here. So yeah, everybody's a junior, seeing a lot of people from different parts of the country, Connecticut, Maryland, I think somebody's Los Angeles, Virginia. That's great. Thanks everybody for being here. So let me tell you how I run these. You can see that this is a meeting. I'm going to share slides in a minute. And so the only reason I mentioned that this is a meeting and not a webinar is that if you can keep your mic, muted, unless you really want to ask a question, that's fine. I really appreciate, I love some of the people here who had their video on. Thanks for doing that. It's just nice to be able to see other faces out there than just kind of the blank screen of a webinar. So that's why I like doing meetings. And this is recorded. So we'll send out an email tomorrow if you want to, look it over again or share it with somebody else. And feel free to put questions in the chat. I will kind of try and glance over at the chat to see if there's anything really pressing. And if not, I will go, kind of at the end and scroll through. I'm gonna usually, if I do this at night, I, kind of run over and I just kind of continue answering people's questions. But because this is in the middle of the day, I'm probably going to try and cut it at 1 o'clock. But I always look at the chat and see if there's some major themes of questions that come up. And if there are, I'll try and address it in a follow-up email. So let me share my screen. And thank you everybody for sharing where you're watching from. Okay. I don't know, wait. Can you guys, yeah. Are you guys seeing the slide, the front side that says Road to College? Or somebody can just put up a thumbs. Thank you. Okay, so a head shake, that was good. And let me just get the chat up so I can see that. Okay, so today I'm going to discuss, and I know like the title might have been maybe a little misleading. I mean, I'm going to talk about how to build a college list, but I always tend to focus on how to build a college list that is affordable and where your student can find the most merit money. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what are merit scholarships, just to make sure that we all have a good understanding about that. And then a little bit about the financial side of understanding what you can afford and how you use that in building the college list. Tips for how you build a balanced college list. And also, I'm going to show you the tool that we did create called College Insights, which helps particularly in finding the colleges that can offer your student the most merit scholarship money. So I'm going to try and fit in a lot. So this is basic, but I do like to start here. Again, this is a little bit more from the financial side of how you pay for college, because how you build your college list has a huge impact, right, on what your cost of college is, and therefore how you as a family can pay for college. So if you stepped back for a second, there's really 3 buckets really that we're all getting money from to figure out how to pay for college. The first one, either we have saved, and so we have family contributions. That savings could obviously be in 529 plans, or it could just be in other non-529 money. And a lot of times people also have to take from their current income to pay for college. So that's family contributions. I should actually say, I don't really put it up here, but of course, a third is if you're lucky enough to have relatives who are willing to contribute, but that's probably not many of us. So there's family contribution, there's free money. And then when there's not enough of the free money and family contribution, we unfortunately have to go to borrow. But within free money, and this is where we're going to focus on today, is money that comes from the colleges themselves, and that's in the form of need-based aid or financial aid or merit scholarships. And then there are private scholarships and government grants. I don't focus that much on private scholarships, and I actually, not that I want to discourage anybody from focusing on private scholarships, but I would very much encourage you to focus on merit scholarships first. And then if you and your student have the time and energy, I would focus on private scholarships. But you'll learn more about merit scholarships. And the reason for that is the saying we always have is the largest or the most money a student will receive, the largest scholarship a student will receive will be from the college itself. So colleges do give out money. You have to target them properly. And a scholarship money that you will get from a college will, in most cases, far outweigh the private scholarship money that a student can get on their own. It is not to discourage private scholarships. It's really more about kind of where to put your energy. If it's, the 80-20 rule, where can you put, where can you put your energy to get the biggest bang from the buck? And that right now, particularly in the process, is finding the colleges that can offer the most merit scholarships. Okay. The other thing I like to always point out about a college list is we also have another saying that the college list drives everything, right? So the college list is ultimately going to drive where your student can be accepted. It's going to drive your family's cost of college. And the other thing that sometimes people don't recognize is it's going to drive how much work the process is going to be. So the more colleges on the college list, certain types of colleges, it's going to drive the number of essays that a student has to do. That's fine as long as you're aware of that connection between, the size of the college list and how much work there is to be done. And sometimes you need to dig a little further to understand all the essays that a college is asking. I know, of course, there's the Common App, and we think that there's this one essay that should be applied to all the colleges. But unfortunately, over the years, colleges are still asking for supplemental essays, the Why Us essay. If a student is applying to a particular scholarship, which again might be driven from a merit scholarship, there's an additional essay for that. So sometimes one school can end up having, 3 or 4 essays, and that's where the workload builds up. Okay. So to just kind of, again, start with merit scholarships, and then we'll move into building a college list. At its most basic level, a merit scholarship is really a discount. It's a discount that the college is providing off of their sticker price, and they're using this discount to lure students who they want to have at their college. Most likely, they're trying to attract higher academic students, but it could be that they want to attract a student with a certain talent. It could be a student that is applying to a certain major. It's hard to always know why they're using their discount dollars, but in the majority of cases, it is really to attract a student that has a higher academic profile. So because everybody's trying to raise their rankings, even though we don't like to use that word, but even if there weren't rankings, everybody's always trying to, raise what they view as the quality of their students. And so they're trying to attract, that student that is at the higher end of the academic range that they normally accept. I'm just looking, somebody saying, is a merit aid a taxable event? Yeah, I said a discount. It's a good question. It's actually luckily not. So if a college gives you your student a merit scholarship and then they lower the price, they lower the tuition, it is not taxable. There are some other taxable events related to private scholarships, but not if they're just reducing the tuition. Okay, so then there's a question, is merit scholarships impacted by parent financial situation? Possibly. I'm going to get to that a little bit later. The other beauty, if you want to use that word, for merit scholarships, and particularly if you compare merit scholarship to a private scholarship, is that merit scholarships tend to be renewable. So when colleges offer a merit scholarship, there are a lot of cases they're offering it to incoming freshmen, and that is a scholarship that they are committing to offer to the student every year that they're attending, as long as they usually meet some sort of requirements. And I'll talk about that in a second. But the big difference on private scholarships are most private scholarships are one and done. So again, just something you have to keep in mind if your student is getting private scholarships and you're relying on that to make college affordable, that means every year that student has to go out and find another private scholarship, because the private scholarship they got that first year is not likely renewable, and they also usually can't apply to it again. So private scholarship is work that needs to be done every year. I just caught a question that said, do they offer merit scholarships to transfer students? They do. It's colleges do, not usually at the same rate, or they don't give as many merit scholarships out to transfer students. So it's something to definitely ask if your student's transferring. It's not a given. The most money that they give out are to the incoming freshmen. So I mentioned that scholarships are renewable. Your merit scholarships are renewable. The merit scholarship will usually come with a minimum GPA. I only plant that seed now is that it's something to obviously look at in more detail with when and if your student gets the actual merit scholarship. But some minimum GPAs are pretty easy. There'll be a 3.0, and and hopefully most students will get the 3.0. Sometimes the merit scholarship does come with a higher minimum GPA. And if it's anything close to a 3.5, not that your student can't continue to get the 3.5, it's just something to think about, because that is more pressure on making sure that they get that GPA requirement, and therefore they can continue with the merit scholarship. Then the last point is, and this is for when everybody gets to the point of estimating their total cost of college, which would be over 4 years, that merit scholarships, whatever is given the first year, is usually what is offered, all 4 years. So if it's the $20,000 merit scholarship, that's $20,000 each year. That's great, but when you're doing your estimations, just keep in mind that tuition will increase. Unfortunately, sometimes between 3% and 5%. I've even seen 8%. But the tuition scholarship amount is not going to increase. So just factor that in. Okay, so somebody's asking, which is a great question, can you still get a merit scholarship if you're applying early decision? Maybe. And that's going to be, up to the college. And unfortunately, we don't really have enough insight into that. So the reason why I say maybe is, well, first off, there are a certain set of colleges that don't even offer merit scholarships. And those are the most selective colleges. And and those selective colleges are also a lot of the colleges that are offering early decision. But there are some colleges that, even though you're applying early decision, they will still offer you the merit scholarship. Will they offer you the same amount of the merit scholarship that you would have gotten if you would have applied regular decision? Hard to tell, and probably I would question that they're not going to. Obviously, if a student applies early decision, they are raising their hand and they are saying, I'm going here no matter what you offer me. So just think about it in any type of a business situation or negotiation situation. If somebody's already saying, I'm committing myself to you, the college doesn't have to offer as much money. They may still offer a merit scholarship. Some college might still offer the same amount, but you are putting yourself at risk that you might not get the same merit dollar amount if they had applied early action or even regular decision. So there are 3 types of merit scholarships that we talk about. One is automatic. And as the name implies, every student who applies to that college will automatically, their application will be reviewed and be considered for a merit scholarship. Most of the colleges that offer automatic merit scholarships are basing their scholarships on GPA and an SAT or ACT score. And of course, in this world of test optional, if your student doesn't enter in or doesn't submit an ACT or an SAT score, they're still being considered for the merit scholarship. There are some schools that will say that their merit scholarships are contingent on submitting an ACT or SAT score. You kind of have to look at the fine print, as I say, or ask the school, because that type of stuff is constantly changing. We honestly do not have the most up-to-date. Nobody really is tracking that information because colleges aren't necessarily transparent about if they are requiring ACTs or SATs. I mean, they will hopefully say it on the website. They will obviously be tell you that if you ask directly, but that's just something to keep in mind. We crowdsource college offers, and that's something that you can see in our in our College Insights tool. And at some schools, we have noticed that students that submit their ACT, SATs do get higher merit scholarships. I can't say that I can say that like it's scientifically. We don't have an actual pure analysis, but just kind of as looking at certain schools and particularly working with some families to do some financial aid appeals, we've noticed that. So I would just ask these types of questions to the college. I think what you're also going to get out of today's conversation or presentation is that there is data that can help guide your search, but it's not going to give you the final answers. And so a lot of times you're going to have to create a list of questions and ask the college directly. And I personally think that this is a great exercise for your student. Some of these questions are perfectly student oriented types of questions where they can start interacting with the admissions rep and gather some of the information. So going back to the 3 types of merit scholarships, automatic, you will also tend to see these types of scholarships, and I'll show you an example, as grids or charts on a college's website. Those are the best. I mean, honestly, a college that is showing you a grid is really transparent. You know, they are going to go by what they have displayed, and they want to make it easy for you to understand how they're giving out their money. The only thing that might be a little less transparent is when they show you GPAs, you want to make note, are they showing a weighted GPA or an unweighted GPA? And again, this is a question to ask the college, how are they calculating their GPAs? I wish there was a universal calculation, but again, every college usually recalculates a student's GPA, and you just want to know what courses that they are including. Again, mostly it's the core courses, but how are they doing the calculation? And I bring this up. I had a family that I worked with actually 2 years ago, and I just saw a post in the Paying for College 101 group just the other day of this incident where a student had calculated their GPA. They thought that they were going to get a certain scholarship level. And when they thought they were going to get the top scholarship level, when they got their offer back, it was the next tier down. And it really came down to the way they calculated the GPA and they didn't know the way the college was going to calculate the GPA. So they are now in the process of asking that information, which you should probably ask at the beginning of the search process, not after you get the offers. So moving on from automatic merit scholarships, there are competitive merit scholarships. And those are the scholarships that usually have a deadline. And they also have in a lot of cases, a separate application to fill out, and therefore usually a separate and another essay to work on. So I bring this up because deadlines are so important. You need to know that sometimes the deadline for merit scholarship is different than the deadline for applications. You know, as if your student was just going to apply and wasn't going to apply to the merit scholarship, then in some schools, the application or admissions deadline is later than the actual merit scholarship deadline. So So important to know that type of information up front. Again, you're going to become very good friends with the college websites. And you will probably also see some colleges have good websites and some colleges do not. But at least you'll know the information that you're looking for. So in a competitive merit scholarship, understand what the deadlines are, understand what the additional requirements are for your student to apply. And then the last category is talent-based. It's kind of as what the name implies. It's for students that have some sort of a talent in art, music, dance, theater. There are auditions that tend to go along with these scholarships. Again, deadlines related to when the auditions need to be scheduled or when a portfolio might need to be submitted. So be really aware of all of that type of information. So somebody's asking, are competitive merit scholarships on a college website? Yes, they are on a college website. In College Insights, we have a link to each college's page where they list their scholarships. But if you go to any college website, I would just recommend in the search bar, typing in scholarships, typing in merit, and hopefully it should bring you to the page on their website that shares all that information. Oh, okay. So somebody's asking, I was told by a community orchestra music director that you don't necessarily have to major in music to get a music scholarship. That's actually at some schools. Yes, that is true. So you don't have to, major in whatever the talent is to still apply for the scholarship. So definitely true. But I'm not saying it's a universal truth, but some schools do give out talent scholarships, and you don't have to be majoring in whatever that talent is. Okay. So just wanted to show you, this is an example of the grids that I was talking about. I happen to have it here for the past 4 years. So then this is Miami University, just to show you that this is just to show you the progression, because they change they may change every year. So back in 2020, this was before the pandemic, you could see that the chart, this is at the bottom right, that the chart had the test scores and GPAs. Moving into fall of 2021, we were in the pandemic, and Miami University took away the test score requirements, and they were just showing the grid based on GPA. And then you can see from 2021 to 2022 and to 2023, actually between 22 and 23, it didn't change much, but between 21 and 22, you can see that they changed their category or their ranges of GPA based on what they were willing to give. And the other thing I wanted to point out, and Miami University is just transparent about it, is that they say that this is the weighted high school GPA that they are looking at. How, again, how they are calculating, and if they are recalculating that even in a weighted version, I would get the details on what they mean. Are they strictly taking whatever GPA is provided in the transcript? That might be the case in some colleges, or are they doing any sort of recalculation? So a really important question to ask. So here's an example of a competitive merit scholarship at USC. You have to apply by November 1st for their merit scholarships. You actually also have to apply early action, which is the early action deadline. And if you miss that, if you missed that early, I think I have to update this image, but basically the point at USC is that you have to apply early for to be considered for their merit scholarships versus if you're applying regular decision. So that's a pretty well-known school where the deadlines differ, and you have to be aware about it. And the same thing for Boston University. Their deadline is earlier than their regular decision deadline for merit scholarships, and they give a hint as to what they're looking for in their merit scholarship applicants and winners. So they're kind of saying, test scores aren't required, but the type of students that tend to receive these scholarships have an SAT of above 1500 or an ACT score of above 33. So they're being honest and saying that we're not requiring it, but you have to give some sort of sense of what type of academic level of a student is going to receive this scholarship, and they're doing that by sharing with you the types of test scores that those students tend to have. Okay, so somebody is sharing, thanks, that many of the state public schools have a November 1st deadline for merit discounts. So, and thanks for sharing, Brian. And in addition, their application deadline is probably later. So again, you have to really pay attention to the merit scholarship deadlines and then admission deadlines. So I just wanted to touch on EFC, or expected family contribution. This potentially is changing to something called the SAI Student Aid Index, but sadly, I just saw an article just last week that said that the government was supposed to make these changes as of this October, but there is the possibility that October 1st is not going to be met. And it was very unclear from the communication what that meant, because they said, well, they're still going to try and implement by the end of 2023, but I don't understand how they could implement halfway through a season. So I wish I had more information about that. I'll try and gather some more. But in the absence of really knowing, when that switch is going to happen, and even knowing when that switch is going to happen, the only formula we have today is the formula we know for expected family contribution. And so that's kind of what we can work off of. And I'm hoping that, you can't raise your hand, but can people put in the chat, have they estimated their EFC yet? Do they even know what this is? Anybody wants to put that in? Not yet. Yes, I've estimated it. Will those changes be helped? Not yet. Okay, no. So I encourage you to do an estimate of your EFC. One of the best or fastest or quickest way where to do it is, honestly, the College Board has a very good EFC calculator. If you just Googled College Board EFC calculator, it would come up, and I would use that. I'm going to guess that most families that are here, most families that, are like in our audience are, you're going to have a high EFC, which means that you're not going to get any need-based aid. And that's why you're going to want to be looking for colleges that offer merit scholarships. Okay, thank you. Somebody is also suggesting that Harvard has a good calculator, which is to go back and make edits on, which is very helpful. And somebody's asking, is the EFC per year? It is. So the EFC is based on your taxes of 2 years prior from the fall that your student is going to go into college. So, if your taxes and your income change and your assets change year to year, that's the type of thing that's going to impact your EFC. So Stephanie's asking, going forward, will each student have to cover their SAI, or is it going to be split between all students in college for the year? So that was a huge, change to the calculation of EFCs, particularly for families that have multiple students in college at the same time. As far as I know right now, in that concept of kind of getting credit or your family EFC being split among multiple students is being taken away. So, which is a huge impact to families, obviously with multiples, with twins and families that have multiple students in college at the same time. So, Stephanie, to my knowledge, yes, unfortunately, families with multiple students, each student's going to get their own EFC, and it is not going to be split among the students. Okay, so FM and IM. FM means the federal methodology. So that is if a school only looks at your FAFSA, they are using the federal methodology. IM is institutional methodology, and that is for colleges that use the CSS profile. They have their own formulas and calculations. They don't share those with us, unfortunately. They don't share them with the public because that's their kind of secret sauce of how they're looking at people's finances. They might share pieces of the formula. So they might say some schools include your home equity or a percentage of your home equity in the calculation. Other schools do not, and that sometimes makes a big difference. And the College Board gives you a close estimate of what your institutional methodology, or what the CSS profile calculation will come out to, because they control the CSS profile. So that's why I do tend to steer people towards the College Board, because they have probably more knowledge about what the college's calculations are. But for lack of anything else, you're not going to know. You should know a good estimate of what your FAFSA EFC is. You'll probably have a little bit. You won't have as close of an estimate of what the institutional methodology, that what their what their final EFC is. Sometimes they don't even share it on your financial aid award letters. Families have to go back and ask, what was the EFC that you're using to base this information on? So, it's somewhere around there, but my guess is, quite honestly, if your FAFSA ESC is at a certain level, it's not going to matter what your CSS profile is at, because most likely it's going to be too high to receive aid. But I don't want to get too deep into this. I just want to tell people to go and get some sort of an estimate, because that's going to tell you what direction you need to look at. Are you looking for schools that can offer you your need, or are you going to look for schools that offer you merit? Okay. And when you do get your EFC, you're going to look at the college's cost of attendance, which is the COA. You subtract your EFC, and that number that is left over is your need. And if the need is above, actually, okay, yeah. So if the need is above 0, so that's saying that, for example, the cost of attendance of a school was 60,000, your EFC was 30,000. So you have a need of another 30,000, right? So you're going to hopefully look for schools that might be able to offer you money towards that need. If your EFC is 80,000 and the school's cost of attendance is 70,000, then there isn't going to be a school that's probably going to offer you any need-based aid, but they will offer your student merit scholarships. So again, this is why so many families need to understand merit scholarships and find the schools that can offer them. But it's really important to, again, depending on what your EFC is, particularly for families that have an EFC that might be in that 40 to 60 range, at some schools, your EFC might be too high, and you might only be eligible, your student might only be eligible for merit. At other schools, again, depending on what the cost of attendance is, because that's the starting point, and what your EFC is, your same EFC might actually make you eligible for financial need. So, it depends where your EFC is, and it depends what the starting point is of the cost of attendance for the school. Okay, so somebody's asking, what year does the separate EFC start for multiple kids in college? It's going to start whenever the government implements the new FAFSA. And so potentially, if there is some version of the new FAFSA that is implemented this fall, that means that for your families with students starting in 2024, your EFC is not going to be split among multiple students. So I would keep that in the back of your head. Okay, so this is this question about does my family's finances impact merit scholarship money? Again, it's a maybe. We don't, some schools are looking at your family's finances. I mean, there's only a handful of schools that you would call completely need blind, which make all of their admissions decisions without, you know, technically knowing anything about your family's finances. But I would say the majority of the schools fall into what we would call need aware. And so, and again, as it relates to merit, if you are a family that, you know, can probably afford, or that word afford is kind of loose, right? Because our definition of afford and what a college can say is afford. But if you're a family that has an EFC that's greater than the cost of attendance, and your student is in the, you know, top academic range of what that student, that school is looking for, it's likely that the college will offer you the full, you know, merit scholarship, whatever your student might be eligible for. So, but as your student's academic attractiveness kind of, you know, maybe moves down the level, they may or may not be willing to offer as much money to attract that student. And I'll give you an example. I was working with a family whose student got in to a school. I won't mention the school, and they didn't get all of the merit scholarship money or aid that they expected. And when I looked at the student's stats and the family's financial situation, the family actually was asking for need-based aid, and the student was in the middle of the pack academically. He was, you know, completely acceptable, I mean, in terms of what that they were looking for, but he wasn't at the top at the academic range that school normally looks for. And so they gave they gave the family money, but they gave them an average amount of money. They didn't give their top grant to that student. So that's a case where they were looking at the attractiveness of that student's academic profile, as well as how much money that family needed. Okay, so I share this story because this is actually from somebody last year in our Facebook group, and it was a story where the parents shared that the student applied, I'll just summarize it, applied to 6 schools, and sounds like it was a very top heavy list. They applied to 4 schools that were reaches, and he only got accepted to 2 of the schools, and of those 2 schools, only one of them was truly affordable. The other one, they didn't receive any money from. And so they were left with the option, which really wasn't much of an option in April, of their student either going to the school where he got money, but he wasn't that thrilled about attending, or they were going to have to decide if they wanted to take out loans to pay for the more expensive school. But the purpose of this story is to show that the college list, you want to build it so that you have options. So you might put, you know, some schools on the list that are, you know, reaches, so to say, but you have to think about academically what's on that list and financially what's on that list. So I want the student to have choices of where they get accepted to, both academically, and I want the family to have choices about where they can send their student and also afford to send them. So, and this unfortunately is what drives some students' lists to be on the larger side, because you don't know for sure what the final cost of a college is going to be until they send their offer. So for families that are balancing both trying academically to get into a certain level of school and also being able to afford the costs of the school, the students' list tends to be on the slightly larger side, because you're playing the odds both academically and playing the odds of seeing what offers the colleges give back. And then potentially with all of that information, you can also then do some financial aid appeals to see if you can get more money. Okay, great question. Ashley, what's the reason to include reaches if they aren't going to be affordable? That's a personal family decision. I agree with you. It's a little bit, I think that's that question, why put Reaches on your list if you know you cannot afford it? You will see varying opinions about that. Some families will say, well, my student just wants to see if they can get in. And if that's the reason and they want some sort of validation, that's fine, as long as a family, you've had the discussion to say, you may get in, but if the numbers don't work out, we can't afford it, we're not going to be able to send you. Other families, so as much as we can estimate what your costs might be, there's always like a little something, there's a surprise that might come through, particularly in the schools that are offering merit. If it's a school that's not offering merit, and if it's a pure CSS profile school, I would use the net price calculator. And in most cases, those net price calculators are pretty close to what the cost would be. Maybe it's within $5,000. But if you do the net price calculator at a school that's not offering merit and you truly can't afford it, but your student wants to apply, it's really just your family decision about, are you going to let them apply? But as long as you all have the understanding that if the numbers don't work out, you may not be able to go. So it's a great question. It's, something that you and your partner and your student really have to decide, but these are the types of conversations to have before you build the list. And that's why it's so important to understand, and I don't know if this is my next slide or not, but it's number 2, understand what your family budget is, right? So going back to your question again, Ashley, when you say, why should my student apply to a Reach school that may not be affordable? How do you know what is affordable if you don't know what your family budget is, right? So you would be surprised how many people go through the process and they just say, well, we're just going to see what it costs at the end. But if you can't do that, you can't, it's with any major purchase process, right? You don't go, you might for fun look for houses one afternoon and just see what's out there, not wanting to look at the price. But at the end of the day, if you're house hunting, you have to know what your budget is, and you should be looking at houses that are within that budget. So it's the same thing with colleges. You need to know what your family can afford. Can my family only afford $30,000? And I guess in this discussion about family budget, there is how much you can pay without loans. And some families, whatever your philosophy might be, about whether or not you're willing to have your student take on some level of student loans. And I would factor in the federal student loans. They are, and we can send a chart, but they're basically between $5,500 and $7,500 a year, starting from freshman year to senior year. If you need that, if your family needs that extra money, so that level of debt, I think, is completely possible. The big question really comes down to, is the family willing to take on any debt to send the student to college? That again is a family discussion. You could work with a family, financial planner. We can, recommend people to work with if you want to figure out how much your family is willing to. But, my point is, go into this process knowing how much your family is able to pay and potentially willing to pay. And the reason to know that budget number compared to your EFC, and this comes up all the time, is that your EFC is what the school is going to expect your family to pay. Your budget is what you would like to pay. Unfortunately, the school is going by that EFC. So your EFC could be $30,000 and you're saying, I don't want to spend more than $20,000. That's fine. And there might be schools where that can happen, but the school is going to look at the EFC of $30,000. So that's why it's important to know those two numbers, know what the school is looking at, but know what your capacity, your financial capacity is. Okay, so in terms of searching and starting this search, we haven't even gotten to other criteria like, admission rate and some of the softer things like, location and that type of stuff. know your EFC, know your family budget, know kind of this fork in the road. Are you looking for colleges that are going to offer you merit scholarships, or do you need need-based aid? And then I always suggest that families include their state school on a list. Sounds basic, but you'd be surprised. We look at a lot of college lists and people don't include the state school. It's kind of like, you know, it's the baseline to some extent that hopefully that your student has a good chance of getting in. I say that a lot of state schools, even for in-state students, have become very competitive these days. But your state school is going to be usually one of your less expensive options because you're getting in-state tuition. So always look at the state school system and which one of the state schools you can include on the list. Include what we call a leverage school. And this is maybe when you get a little bit further into the process of building the college list. When you have a good set of schools that your student is interested in and that you feel comfortable that you maybe potentially can afford, I like to include one or two what we call leverage schools, where it's a similar school to what might be on the list, but we also know it's more generous. So I say it's similar usually academically, but honestly, usually the more generous schools might be in a different location than you know, the school that's on your list. So we can talk about a little bit later about how you find what we call leverage schools or peer institution schools. But just know that, to just keep that in your mind, that a little further along, it can't hurt to have one, maybe two schools on that list that your student may be lukewarm about going to, but you're applying to, so that you can see what the offer is that they get back. And then you can use that offer, quite honestly, to negotiate with the schools that they really want to go to show that there was a school that gave your student more money. So it's kind of, you know, having the offer in hand. So jumping back to number 4, start with a wide net. I'm going to jump into College Insights right now. And my suggestion is that you don't put too many criteria on the list to start with. You don't say it's got to be a school, like a Big Ten school. It's got to be a school with the football team. It's got to be a school that's in the city. It's got to be a school that has fraternities or doesn't have, you know, Greek system. Those are important, but to me, those are like second tier searching. To me, the first tier is you want to see where your student has the most likelihood of getting in, and where where they're going to offer them the most money. And then you start narrowing down. Of course, major is a kind of a conversation. Should you include major as a factoring point or something to filter? If your student obviously has a basic major, you don't need to. If it's, you know, business, biology, chemistry, right? That's going to be at a lot of schools. If your student is dead set on a major, sure, I would start to include it. I would also have some pretty, you know, deep conversations with your student, like how dead set. I know it's so hard for a 17-year-old to really make a commitment, because you know the percentage is that 60% of students change their major. And so to search for a school solely based on this one major, and then, you know, a year or two in, your student wants to change, you know, it could have affected other places that they might have been willing to look at. So major is important, and I will say, but I wouldn't make it a driving factor yet. And it's also okay if your student is undecided too, at this point, perfectly fine. So I'm going to jump over to College Insights, and then I'll probably mention some of these search tips as we look at College Insights. So let me stop sharing for a second and go to another screen. And can you guys see this new screen? Any? Thank you. Okay, actually, let me get out for a second. Okay, so if you go to College Insights, and so we developed this tool because we like to look at data, and data in the college space is spread in lots of different places. The government has data, the colleges have data, what we call from the common data set. And then we've created our own data by crowdsourcing families' offers over the past, you know, about 4 years. So the government has their data, the colleges have their common data set information. There's not many places that pull that information together and let you search by it and filter by it. And so that's what we did in College Insights. So if you come to College Insights, you can create a free account and you get to see 5 schools and all the data related with it. I'm gonna log in and show you what it's like if you went fully in. Okay, I see some questions here. I'll come back to it. Just want to make sure that people can get a quick glimpse about College Insights. So you can see there's a lot of data kind of going across here. You can jump to different sections of data by these tabs on top. Then there's 3 different ways, or there's really 2 different ways of searching. You can put in specific schools if there are, you already have an idea of some schools, or you want to just look at the stats of individual schools. You can put in however many you want here. On the top here, you can, as you're going through and researching, you can create lists. So, and you can name them. So, and then you can come back to them and then you can compare different lists. So, this is just different names of lists that I was working with students on. You can name the list whatever you want. So you can come back to your lists in the top section here. And then on the bottom section here, it says search by preferences. And again, this is philosophical, but we don't want people to get too narrow, searching and potentially miss some schools. So we only really show some major or big picture filters. So you can search by major, you can search by location, you can search by school size, and then you can search by a test score or a GPA. So let me just, again, this is how I recommend people start out to kind of get that cast the wide net list and then narrow down. But I wouldn't actually put in major. I wouldn't put in location, and I know kids have specific locations that they want to go to, but let's just be open-minded, kind of at the start of the search process. I also wouldn't put in size. If you looked at colleges, you would find that the majority of colleges are like 5,000 and below. If you're only looking for these big colleges, you're going to cut out a lot of colleges without even knowing what could have been there. So again, I wouldn't actually even put in size yet. I would personally just look at where is my student, either kind of in the average, or where's my student at the top end of the academic range. And then we can sort some of the columns that will help you look further. But let's just say I have here listed already a 30. I'm going to look for schools where 30 to a 32 are in the top range or are at the 75th percentile or above. And we'll see what comes back. So let me make sure that I didn't see. Yeah, okay. So here are the results. And then you can go through any of these columns and sort them. So so I can come here. So this, again, we know that this list is of schools where the ACT is a 30 to a 32 in the 75th percent in this column of ACT 75th percentile. You can see that all of those scores fall in that range. I could look and say, okay, I want to just look at the admission stats. First of all, I want to see maybe who is offering early decision in this group of colleges that I just got results on. I just sorted here. This is from lowest to highest, we can do this the opposite too. And now I can see that these schools that I've already narrowed down also offer early decision. Here are their early decision rates. Yes, early decision tends to be a higher admit rate versus regular decision. I'm just going to sort it. Almost in all of these cases, you can see that. Oh, that's interesting, but Loyola not. That's just pretty interesting. Okay, so Loyola, the first one, takes a lot of early action students. So you can see that's where that's where they're pulling a lot from. But and also that's interesting. So I take back what I said as we're looking through here. Some of these schools are actually taking fewer early decision. University of Denver is versus their regular decision. So I shouldn't speak so quickly, but like Chapman's, no, here's an example. Bucknell takes 54% of their, they admit 54% of the students early decision versus 34% regular decision. But my point is, you can now kind of sort with this more narrow list of schools. The other thing I would jump to, if you're looking for like schools that can offer merit, is the tab that has merit scholarships, and you can sort these schools by the average merit award that the college offers. So let's find the highest is Trinity College. Sounds great, right? They're giving 58,000, but the other column to look at, these two columns, and they're right next to each other, is the first column was what's the average merit award that the college is offering. The second column is what percentage of students that don't have financial need are actually getting these awards. So Trinity, it's giving a great merit average dollar amount, but they're only giving it to 2% of the students. So you want to look for the schools like Clarkson that is giving 35% of merit scholarships to 90% of the students without financial need. And they're probably giving it to the 90% of the students that are in that high bracket. Well, we know that you're already in that high bracket of your student being in the 75th percentile or above. So this is when I would start to kind of go down these schools. Now I know that my student is in the top academic percentile, and I could look more carefully at what type of dollar amounts that these schools are offering. And you can also scroll over a little bit and also see the cost of attendance. This is now when you can start to estimate your final costs. And I shouldn't even use the word final but you can estimate what your net cost would be. So for example, Clarkson, if they're giving out an average merit award of 35,000 and their cost of attendance is 73,000. So your estimate, if your student has a 30 to 32 or even higher, and they apply to Clarkson, I would estimate that they would get the average merit award. They might even get higher, but let's just stick with the average. And so I would subtract that 35 from the 73, and that's what I would estimate to be your net cost at that school. And so this is how you can start to get and now you can compare what your estimated net cost is compared to what your budget. So I had, there was a mother last year who actually had, her EFC was, I think 30,000. She actually even had the money to pay for the EFC, but she also had 5 kids. And so she said, it doesn't matter today, I can pay for my first child. I obviously have to pay for all my other kids behind there. And she made a budget that she was only going to spend $25,000 on schools. And so she, found those schools that could either offer her child enough money to bring down the cost to $25,000, or she went and looked at schools where the cost of attendance were just on the lower side. And there were some schools, that were towards what her budget number was. My point was that she was very purposeful. She knew what her EFC was, but she also knew what her budget was. And so she stuck to that budget. She found the schools that could offer her student enough money to meet the budget, or she started and found schools where their cost of attendance was already within their budget range. But that's because she did that planning beforehand. She did that discussion beforehand, and she knew what she was focusing on going into the college search. So it is exactly 1 o'clock. I will look for a few minutes. Let me look through some of these questions. Let me just say we kind of scratched the surface, and I took a very data-oriented approach to starting the college search. There is absolutely a whole other side of college search, which I would call, qualitative. But to me, you don't get to the qualitative side of the search until you have a better framework and a better initial list quantitatively, right? So that initial list has got to be schools with a good likelihood that your student is going to be accepted. It's got to be a list of schools where you have a good chance of affording those schools, and it's got to meet maybe some basics like major, and maybe location. But I would try and try and steer away a little bit on location. And then when you have, maybe it's that list of 30, that fit those important criteria, I would flip and start looking at the qualitative sides. And the qualitative side, we can have a whole nother session on about, what types of questions you want to ask, who you want to talk to, and how do you really dig below the surface about what's going on at a college. So just wanted to kind of mention that, there's the quantitative approach and the qualitative approach. So, okay. So, let me just scroll back a little bit. Why are in-state and out-of-state figures the same? In-state and out-of-state are just the same if it's a private school, right? There's no distinction. And then the cost of attendance numbers are different if it's a public school for your in-state students versus the out-of-state students. So anybody can try College Insights for 5 schools for free. And then after that, there is a subscription monthly fee. A lot of people kind of use it for a month. They build some lists, then they might pause or cancel the subscription, then they come back a little later. The one thing actually I didn't show you quickly is the offers that you can see of people sharing their actual amounts. So right now we show 3 years of offer information, and we are showing live offers. These are offers for this current year. I just pulled up Clarkson. So these are families that have shared their information. Sometimes we have to kind of go back and clean it a little bit because obviously, well, these persons said regular decision, and probably I have to check. I don't think that Clarkson gave out regular decision, so they might have just picked the wrong option. But in this case, these people have shared their EFC range. They are sharing what state they're from, their student's GPA, and if their student submitted a test score, then it's shared here too. So all of these students submitted a test score and they received merit. And you can see that the range of merit that they got. I'm not sure I would go back, honestly, to 3 years to look at those offers because things have changed so much, but you could look at the year before as well and see what students tended to get with a certain GPA or SAT score. And we use this information a lot to help guide parents on whether they should appeal a financial aid, an offer, a merit offer, or a need-based aid offer. And if we see that there are students that are with better SATs or better test scores or better grades getting, compared to them, or it's a great comparison. And we use that really helpful to guide both whether they should appeal and how to write the appeal letter. Okay. Let me go back. Okay. So somebody's asking, somebody said that there was a field, and I don't know what they looked at, that said, it said DePaul said that they gave 114 students, 114% of the students received merit scholarship money. So let me just say that this, yes, that is in theory the correct number. Of course, you can't have something over 100%. The information in college, a lot of the information in College Insights is from the common data set. The common data set is, submitted by the colleges, and there's very, very rarely any sort of double checks on the information that the colleges submit. Nobody checks to know the accuracy of what the college is submitting in the common data set. And a lot of time, not a lot, but sometimes when you see a number like that, 114, we did the math. That's the way it came out based on the numbers that DePaul gave in their common data set. Did they make a mistake in their common data set? Possibly. You know, so in that case, my guess is it's, you know, probably 100% of the students are getting merit aid, but you'd have to kind of call DePaul and say, what are you, this is the numbers that your common data set is calculating to, and it's probably some mistake. Can you look into it? Yeah, so Tammy said that so many of the columns on this spreadsheet are columns that she has to comb through the common data set and has taken so many hours to gather. Tammy, that's exactly the purpose of why we did this, is to jumpstart your search. You shouldn't be wasting the time looking at the common data set just to pull the numbers, which can be easily compiled. And now you have a tool to search through all of that data and to sort and to save and to filter. So thank you. Glad it was helpful for you. Good question. And I'll probably answer this and then kind of say goodbye, and then I'll look through the rest of the questions after. Amy is asking, how current is the data? So the common data set, I'm sorry, the data in College Insights is from what I'm going to say is the most recent common data set. And that is from the year 2021 to 2022. And that is the year of the common data set, but the common data set is based on data for incoming freshmen the year before. So common data set, sorry, I should try and be more clear in explaining this. Common data set is usually filled out after the freshman class arrives in the fall. So for the freshman class that just arrived in 2023, right? Colleges are now filling out their common data sets for the information based on that set of students that just started in 2023. So the data that is so we don't have that common data set yet because the colleges haven't finished and it hasn't been compiled. So we have the common data set for the class before, for the class that that entered in 2022. But to tell you the truth, that's going to be the case for every place that you see data, because if any place is pulling data from the common data set, the most recent for the class that just entered in 2023 just isn't available. There's always this lag time between when the colleges gather the data, you know, they're waiting until the students start school, and when they submit the data, that it can be compiled and shared with other websites. But I will actually include that in a follow-up email to just make that more clear. But it's a valid question and it's a good question. So hope this was helpful for everyone. I went through a lot. I went through it fast. I apologize, just trying to get it in within the hour, which we're already over a little bit. But if you have questions, feel free to email me. Actually, it'd be great if you emailed them to support@roadtocollege.com. It's just easier for me to kind of gather all of the questions there. And we will do this again, and we will do some other variations about how to approach building the college list. But for people who are starting out, hopefully this was a good start. Get you familiar with some of the numbers, get you familiar with some of the approaches, you know, get you to get thinking and having conversations about your budget and your EFC. Now is the time. February is a great time. And this is also a very iterative process. So, you know, people make changes, they add colleges to the list, they take colleges off, like, you know, up until the deadline. Hopefully you will get to a core set of colleges by beginning of summer that you know your student is going to apply to, but you might be continuing to add to that list as the summer goes by. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day, and I'm sure I will see you again soon. Bye.